In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the PlayStation Vita. So, a lot of comments have emerged online. Recently, there's like a huge sentiment that says the PS Vita is dead. The PS Vita doesn't have a future. Sony has abandoned PS Vita. So these kind of comments made me want to make this video, and I'm not here to try to prove a point that the PS Vita is dead or isn't dead, but what I would say is my opinions on this topic are mixed, because I don't believe it's really dead, and I don't believe it's really kicking and alive at the same time. So Sony released the PlayStation Vita a couple of years ago, and they've had a rocky start, as all of you know, and as Vita owners themselves might have experienced. So the atmosphere when Sony released the PlayStation Vita was an atmosphere where things were changing. The mobile gaming industry had completely changed from the big AAA companies that used to control the mobile gaming sector. Phones were taking over. Phones like Samsung and Android and Google, and obviously the iPad. So things were changing and people were moving away. Games had become cheaper, more accessible, and easier to access for people with limited incomes. So these kind of changes were huge challenges for Sony to overcome. While the PSP was the Sony's first entry into the mobile market, and it was kind of successful, not entirely successful, but it was somewhat successful, the Vita was doomed from the beginning. Everybody said that this thing is not going to work. So Sony, knowing all this, they released the PS Vita system, and it came out through a mixed reception. It got a really mixed reception when it came out, and people who adopted it and liked it really liked it. People who didn't really hated it, and it was a mixed bag. So that being said, coming up on 2014, now we are at a time where mobile gaming is huge. The 3DS has already made a big solid foundation, and Nintendo is doing very well. The iPad is doing very well. Android is doing very well, and Vita is still in the middle of the road. Now, why is that? Well, you can't really blame anyone. There's no specific blame for this. You can't blame Sony. You can't blame third parties or competitors putting the Vita down. You can't blame anyone. This is just a matter of change. People's habits have changed. People's way of gaming has changed. The internet is alive with a lot of indie devs, and you could pretty much play all your indie games on your PC or your tablet or even consoles, because they've adapted many indie games, and accessibility is easier now. So where does that leave the Vita? The Vita was supported pretty well by Sony. I mean, they did a good job with what they could do given their financial situation. They really support for Borderlands 2, which wasn't great, but it wasn't that terrible. The frame rate was unstable, but still playable. They supported games like Soul Sacrifice, Killzone Mercenary, both pretty decent games. Killzone Mercenary was a really good game. I loved playing that game. The action was good. The combat, the stealth elements, really interesting. Soul Sacrifice Delta was not my kind of game, but I did put 30 hours into it. The combat was great. The story presentation was really weird and awkward. I have no idea what they were going for, but still, they supported it and they released it. So these are like big budget titles that they did. Then Sony started moving towards the indie market, because indie games have become so big now. Everybody wants to get into that. Braid really kicked it off. Jonathan Blow's Braid. That really changed everything. After that, indie games have become like a huge craze now, and consoles are getting into it. So Sony has gotten into that now, and they are really opening up the system for a lot of indie games. So for the people who say that the PlayStation Vita is dead, I don't think that's entirely true. While the sentiment can exist on certain levels, it's not entirely true, because you have games like Crimson Land, which is a really old PC game, and you can see Total Biscuit's review on that. He does a really great job with his his first impressions on it. It's a good game, and it's ported over to the Vita. It works great. You have games like Rogue Legacy. You have games like Duke Nukem Total Meltdown, which is coming out. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, I could play these games much better on my PC. Sure, you could do that, but this is not about exclusivity. Having a mobile device, for me, is not about exclusivity. It's about comfort. If I feel comfortable playing a game of Rogue Legacy on my Vita, Sure, I will buy it on the Vita. If I feel comfortable playing it on the PC, I'll buy it on the PC. So it just depends on my needs. So it's not about exclusivity. Sure, you could play Borderlands 2 really, really well on your Nvidia Shield or your PC at 60 frames per second, but there might be times where you just want to carry a small portable device with you and pull it out when you're in the coffee shop, play a little bit of Borderlands 2 with the jarring frame rate at times, and just put it back in. You might enjoy that, and people do enjoy that. That's why we buy it. That's why we invest money in buying this stuff. And for that, the Vita is great. It still has a bunch of great games. As you can see, I only have a few here because the memory card, I only have 16 GB. Wait, yeah, it's a 16 GB memory card. So I only have a few games here, but most of them are stored on my PC. So Arkham Blackgate Origins was panned by critics mainly because the graphics were pretty bad, and well, they weren't bad, but they were average because it came out for the Nintendo 3DS as well. But for me, it was a fun game. I liked it. It's sure, it has issues, the whole 2D 3D plane switching thing, it has issues, but overall it's a fun game. But then you have games like Mortal Kombat, you have games like Injustice. These games are phenomenal. They work really well on the Vita. Sure, you could play these on your consoles, but if you are invested in the Vita and you buy them on the Vita, if you're on the go, if you're going to school, on the bus, on the train, you can just pull it out, play it, put it back in. So I think that's a good value proposition, and a lot of people in the Asian market, especially in Japan, they do this. That's why the Vita is successful there. And people in America, they do that too. But however, I think Sony has not supported the Western market as well because they have their financial difficulties. You know, they are not able to cope up. The PlayStation 4 is doing very well, but the Vita, unfortunately, is not doing that well for them because the mobile market is becoming bigger and bigger, and it's more accessible. Games are cheaper on the mobile market, so it's having limited success there. But now a lot of you might say, well, the Nintendo 3DS is doing great. I mean, that's a mobile device and is doing great, so why can't the Vita? Well, there's a very, very reasonable explanation for that. Nintendo is a company that makes games. I mean, they are a developer. They are not just a hardware manufacturer. They themselves are developers. So when they make a device, they are going to support it with everything they have. They have their Mario, they have their Zeldas, they have Pikmin. So they have a very loyal fan base for that, and they are developers themselves. They know the limitations of their system. You're not going to see a game like Borderlands on the 3DS because they know the limitation, but you will see a game like Resident Evil on 3DS. Why? Because they know their system in and out. They know how it performs. They know how it's supposed to perform, and they're going to do that. And because of that, the 3DS has done very, very well. People have really stuck to it. You know, kids have really gotten into it. I mean, I think Nintendo is the only big company in the mobile market that's able to compete with giants like iPad and Android, Apple and Google. They're able to do that because they have Zelda, they have Mario, and I heard a while back there was a movement from people to try to convince Nintendo to release games for Android, and that was ridiculous. Why would you do that? Those are your properties. You know, why would you ask Nintendo to put out Mario on Android? That's crazy. They lose everything. And there is the problem. Sony by itself does not really have... it has a lot of loyal fans in the US, but a lot more loyal fans in the Japanese market. But Sony does not have that huge mascot kind of attitude to it. You know, they have God of War, which was popular, and I think it still would be popular if it came out for the Vita, but they don't have anything to compete with Mario or Zelda. Sure, that's a different set of gamers, the age group is different, but you know, when you're a big company like Sony, you got to appeal to everyone. You can't be in the niche. You got to appeal to everyone, the hardcore gamers and the casuals. Sony's trying to do that, but it's kind of hard for them on the American side. But in the Japanese market, they're doing a very, very good job. They're releasing One Piece Unlimited, which is an open world anime sort of game. They're releasing Disgaea, which is a strategy RPG, an excellent game. I haven't played it, but I've read the reviews, and it looks excellent. What else is on the horizon for Sony? There's Freedom Wars coming out, there's Helldivers coming out, and I'm really looking forward to these games. I'm looking forward to Helldivers. It's a very low-key action game, but I'm into that. and I'm really interested in that. So it's hard for me to say that the PlayStation Vita is done or it's over. No, it's not done, it's not over, it's going to be okay. It's going to move along, it's going to have great titles. If you really want to know what's coming out, there's a very good site. I'm going to link it down below. It's called the Vita Lounge, and that site has a bunch of information of all these games that are coming out. There's even Akiba's Trip. It might not appeal to everyone. I think it's Akiba's Strip. I'm not sure. It's Akiba's Trip or Akiba's Strip. But it might not appeal to everyone, but still, it's a cool game. It looks cool. You have games like Dynasty Warriors, which might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's fun to play on the go. It's, you know, it's a good game to play on the go if you just want some hack and slash action. Speaking of hack and slash, there's Dungeon Hunters for the PS Vita. Now, this is not the Dungeon Hunters that Gameloft released for Android. It's a completely different game. It's much better made. It has good graphics, and you know, it gives you the Diablo vibe to it, which is good. So I own that game. It was one of the first Vita hack and slash games to come out. There's Sword Art Online, which is not actually an online game, even though it has online in it. The name has online in it, but it's a very good RPG. You can read the reviews online. So this small system still has a ton of good games coming out for it. If you just go on the store and check out what it has, you'll definitely find something that meets your taste. You'll find it there. And this is not a system that's dying or it's dead. No, it's just going through a transition. It has stuff coming out. There are many different strategy RPGs coming out. The indie market is coming out. I don't know if I mentioned Duke Nukem Total Meltdown is coming out. Even though it's a really old game, it's going to be fun to play on a nice OLED screen on the go with a light device. Now, there is one thing that recently happened which got people really on the rails and say, oh no, this is over, the Vita is over. That was PlayStation 4 Remote Play. So if you haven't heard, the PlayStation 4 Remote Play feature is going to come to Android. It's going to start with the Xperia line of phones, but no doubt it's going to get ported or going to come in other phones. And people said, whoa, wait a minute, the Vita had this like really killer exclusive feature that allows you to play your PlayStation 4 games, and now it's gone? It's not exclusive anymore? Oh my god, it's over. No, it's not over. This is a good thing and a bad thing to some extent. Okay, the exclusivity is gone, but now that it's going to be on Android, people like me who play a lot of Android games, have an Android tablet, we're going to enjoy it. We're going to love it. And people like me who also have a Vita device, we're still going to enjoy it on the Vita. Why? Because the Vita has the portability factor. You know, this is one unified system. Now, if I want to do that on my Android Xperia Z3, I need to buy a Nyko clip or a Sony clip. I need to hook up my PlayStation 4 controller, and I need to carry that whole thing around if I want to stream. And sure, it might not be cumbersome to some people, but you know, the alternative is much better. You have a nice OLED screen, you have a single piece system, you can play a little bit of game streaming from your PlayStation 4, put it in your pocket, and maybe sometime when you don't want to carry this, you just have your phone with you, you can use your PlayStation 4 controller with that around the house. So it's win-win. This is just about giving you more options. It's not about exclusivity. You know, the whole thing that, well, Mortal Kombat is good on the PlayStation 4, why would I buy it for the Vita? That argument is invalid. It's not about exclusivity. It's about your taste on where you want to play it. If I'm on an aeroplane, I want to play Mortal Kombat on my Vita, I can pull it out and play it. I'm not going to carry my PlayStation 4 around and play it on an airplane. You could do that, but you might get arrested. Well, you won't, but I don't know. It depends. If it looks like a bomb, they might arrest you. So, yeah, the Vita's not dead. He's doing pretty well. Wait, it's not doing pretty well. It's doing okay in the American market. It's doing very well in the Japanese market. You can go ahead and look at the sales figures. It's doing well. Some of the gripes I have with the Vita, well, as everybody's mentioned, the memory card, they're just too expensive. I mean, if you want people to get into your games and if you expect people to buy digital games, Don't make the memory card so fucking expensive. That's crazy. You know, why would you do that? You're limiting your audience. If you go ahead and watch Alpha Omega Sin's video on the PlayStation Vita, he makes very good points, and you guys should definitely check out his video. Much better than mine. He does a very good job with talking about the Vita, and he talks about the memory cards, which is my gripe too. Why would you make the memory card so expensive? You know, that it's not practical. That's one of my major gripes with the Vita. The other stuff would be, well, Sony needs to maybe do perhaps a little more marketing when they can. They're not in a position to do that right now, but you know, maybe they will. Some of the newer games that have come out, Counter Spy it's a very good game, but it got panned by critics. It got mixed reviews. That was mainly a marketing mishap because a lot of people thought that this is a stealth game, but it's not really just a stealth game. It's mostly an action game with certain stealth elements to it. So if you play it as an action game, you're going to do pretty well. You're going to like it. It's kind of short, but it's repeatable and fun. Still interesting, good atmosphere. And, well, before I get to the end, I should mention the back catalog. So as you all know, the PlayStation Portable, well, it's extinct. It can't access the PlayStation Network anymore. So any of you who bought games for your PlayStation Portable on your PSN store, you can't access it through a PSP. You need to have a Vita. This is unfortunately the harsh reality of digital. Games that you own are going to go away and you won't be able to play them again, but that's unfortunate. Now you have a Vita. There'll be a time when you can't play your Vita games. Same with XBLA. You can't access your XBLA when Xbox 360 is gone. So, you know, that's sad. But the PlayStation Vita is backward compatible. So you can play a whole bunch of backlogs on it, like a whole bunch of games. I mean, if you are savvy enough, you can put custom firmware and play some emulators on it, which I don't think is illegal as long as you own the game. And it's not about piracy. So you can do that and you can have a good time. And the PlayStation Portable, towards the end of the PlayStation Portable, there were a lot of good games that came out, and that system, it went away too soon, I think, and those games unfortunately were missed by a lot of people, and you could probably find them on the PlayStation Network and you could play them, which is great. You could just play them on your Vita. It can play PlayStation 1 games, which is also good. And if you buy the slim model, although it doesn't have the OLED screen, which is disappointing, it still has a good weight to it. It's very light and it's more accessible. My battery's dead. Well, speaking of battery, the lighter version has a better battery. So yeah, I think the PlayStation Vita is going to be fine. And if you own a PlayStation Vita, I don't think you should sell it. It has a good future, especially if you have a PlayStation 4. Come on, you should keep it. It's a good system, and it has a good future to it. It has a bunch of good Asian games coming to it. Some of them you might like, some of them you might not. But I'm personally really looking forward to Helldivers. Not a big game, but still really cool. Rogue Legacy is very good on it. Freedom Wars looks promising, but I don't know about that. We'll just have to wait and see. So in conclusion, as I would repeat again, the PS Vita is not dead. There are a bunch of games on it for it. Just go to the PlayStation Network store, you'll see them. Go to the VitaLounge.com, you'll see them, and you will definitely find something that's to your liking. And don't worry about exclusivity. This is not about exclusivity. This is about enjoying the game you want, where you want, when you want to enjoy it. It's not about being exclusive. You can have the same game in two systems, doesn't matter. So, if you like this video and agree with me, go ahead and like it. If you disagree with me, go ahead and dislike it. I would like to hear your comments and thoughts so we can have a good discussion about this. But as always, thank you for watching.